I welcome you to the module 5 of the course titled Applied Positive Psychology. Now, this module 5 is titled as Psychological Strengths and Assets, and today we will be talking about lecture number 15. And so, this lecture number 15 is divided into two parts. So, we will be talking about first part today. So, the lecture number 15 is about successful aging. So, we will be talking about the concept of successful aging and the different studies associated with it, and we will continue that lecture in the second part of the same lecture, where we will be talking about few more things around the concept of successful aging, and we will also have some applied concepts also. So, just to give you a brief recap of the last lecture, which is lecture number 14. So, lecture number 14 we discussed two perspective of strengths. To understand perspective, the strengths perspective, we discussed two major perspectives which help us to understand psychological strengths. So, one was Gallup Strength Finder, which is also called as a Clifton Strength Finder. So, this particular perspective is associated with the understanding the concept of psychological strength mostly towards while working in the work setting. So, this is mostly developed in the context of work setting. Then we discussed the varieties, the whole classification system. We also discussed the different findings from this research, foundational research from which this whole approach developed, and we also talked about how can we develop those strengths in terms of applied aspect. We also discussed CAPS realized to 4M model, another strength perspective, and understood that there can be varieties of categories of strength like realized strength, unrealized strength, learned behavior, weaknesses and so on, and how should we address all these categories in terms of making the best use of strength in our day-to-day life and in the work setting. So, these are two important paradigms that we discussed in the last lecture. In today's lecture, we will be talking about the first part of lecture number 15. We will be talking about the concept of successful aging, and we also will discuss different models which discuss this concept of successful aging. How to understand this concept of successful aging through some theoretical model we will be talking about. We also discuss some significant studies on successful aging. So, this will be the major focus of this lecture. So, let us start today's lecture. So, before we talk about what is successful aging, it is important to understand why should we understand this whole issue of aging and why does it matter. As a researcher, as a layman, why should we understand this whole concept of aging? What is the importance of it? So, why does aging matter? So, according to Chivens, there are certain reasons which bring out the significance of aging, studying of aging population. Some of the important significance associated with this whole studying of aging population are discussed here. Number one is that preparing now for successful aging can enhance our future well-being. So, aging is a reality that is going to be faced by all human beings. So, by understanding this whole concept of aging, what factors related to successful aging and so on, we will be able to prepare and that will lead to smooth transition into successful aging. So, preparing now for successful aging can enhance our future well-being. That is why it is important to understand this. This is one important reason. So, basically just to understand this, although people generally prefer immediate rewards, research shows that if we see potential benefits as significant, we might be more willing to delay gratification and make choices that support successful aging. So, if you understand the different aspects of successful aging and the significance of it, we will be able to better prepare now so that there is a smooth transition in that. So, that is why we need to understand about it. So, understanding what contributes to aging well can motivate us to take actions now that will have positive impact in our future. If you do not understand, we will not be able to take action now. So, that significance will come from understanding this whole issue of aging, then only we will be able to take the right step towards the future. Second important reason why we should study aging population is that global demographics are shifting due to increased life expectancy and declining birth rate. Now, due to increased life expectancy because of more improved medical facilities and so on, this whole demography is shifting in terms of the aging population is increasing, and also there is a declining birth rate happening across the world. So, the aging population will keep increasing as we proceed towards the future. So we need to understand what to do with them and how to kind of look after this increasing population, especially how to make give a transition into successful aging. So between, for example, some of the statistics shows that between 2000 to 2015, life expectancy rose by 5 years, marking the largest increase since 1960s. So this is life expectancy is increasing gradually. So this trend is creating a growing aging population, with the number of people over 60 expected to rise by 56% by 2050. So this is going to increase dramatically in the coming decades. So these changes presents a challenge and opportunities also, including imbalances in the workforce demographics and shifts in social structures, requiring societies to adapt, ensuring that added years are fulfilling and productive benefits both younger and older generation. So as this whole population is increasing, we should be prepared and we should be also ready to understand their requirement and address their issues properly. So that is why this shifting demographic is also another reason why we should study aging population and address their issues. The third important reason why we should study aging population is that we also have at the population level many negative stereotypes about aging, which can hinder positive interactions and prevent effective support for older people. We all have many negative stereotypes around aging population, which may hinder our interaction with them and looking at the aging population in the right perspective. So we should understand this properly so that these whole stereotypes and biases are removed, so that we can have a healthy views about aging population and address their issues properly. So many people hold biased views, believing that older adults are resistant to change, so they don't change. We also have all these biases, which can lead to biased judgments, particularly in professional settings such as healthcare or finance. Professionals who assume that aging always entails cognitive or physical decline may misdiagnose or offer suboptimal services. So we also have many other stereotypes around aging, that aging population always entails cognitive decline, physical decline. So all this can happen, but not necessarily all these are true in every cases, because there are many other positive things that we'll be looking at in this lecture and upcoming lectures. Studies shows that increased interaction with older adults can reduce these biases, helping people better understand and support successful aging. So the more we understand them, more we interact with them, more we'll be able to understand them better, and more likely that we'll be, will not be biased towards them. So that is why we need to understand this whole issue. So these are some of the reasons why in the first place we need to study aging population, because it is very significant. This population is growing and their population is going to increase dramatically in the coming decades. So we need to understand the issue of whole aging issues, and we need to address them. So these are some of the important reasons why this population should be studied. Now, one of the main focus of this lecture is to understand what is successful aging. So let us understand how this concept of successful aging is conceptualized, what are the different ideas around it. So when we talk about successful aging, it can be understood broadly in two perspectives. One is that we can simply say, if somebody simply reaches old age or certain age mark, that means that person is successfully aged, or the person has made a transition into successful aging in terms of physical years. So that could be one very general idea, which is not the main idea. So it is simply reaching certain age and going beyond certain age, we can say that this person has entered into successful aging category. Second idea is that it is not just about physically aging certain age period, but achieving a high quality of life in old age. So here the second perspective is, which is the most important perspective from psychological perspective, is not just entering certain age group that we say that person has reached a successful aging category, rather whether the person has achieved a certain quality of life, certain level of psychological variables, or like life satisfactions or well-being and so on. What are these important dimensions which enhances the quality of life? Are they able to achieve those? That will determine whether the person has reached a successful aging or not. So let us look into these two perspectives a little bit more, and our focus will be on the second perspective because psychologists mostly focus on the second perspective. So in the first view, the idea is simply living to an older age could define as successfully the person has reached an age group, which is mostly in terms of chronological age group. For example, researchers often consider age 65 as the beginning of old age and 85 as the category of oldest old in the US and UK. So these are like certain objective parameters to decide in which age group a person should be considered. So if somebody reaches 65, we generally say the person has entered into the old age category, and if somebody is 85 or beyond that, we call them, they are in the category of oldest old. So this is a criteria used by US and UK. United Nations define older adults as those 60 or older. So different agencies may have different criteria. So United Nations, for example, define older adults when they reach 60 and beyond that, and oldest old as 80 or above. So by this standard, if someone reaches this advanced age group, they are seen as having aged successfully in terms of chronological age. So this is the first view. The second view, which is more of our interest, is successful aging can be viewed in terms of the quality of life in later years, whether the person has really aged well or not in terms of quality of life. So this perspective emphasizes not just living longer, but doing so in a fulfilling and capable way, highlighting the value of maintaining physical, mental and social well-being into older age. So this perspective focuses on the well-being, multidimensional well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, whether the person is able to maintain all these dimensions of well-being. If they are able to do so, we can say the person has, or person is successfully aging, or we can call them in the category of successful aging group. Now let us look into some of the models of successful aging. Some of this model will have different criteria, which also gives us a certain idea about what is the concept of successful aging. So to understand this whole concept of successful aging, let us look into some of the models that are available in the literature. The first model that we'll be talking about here is a model proposed by Robert Havighurst's model. In the Gerontologist journal, the first issue in 1961, Robert Havighurst introduced the term successful aging. So one of the first use of this term in the academic journal to emphasize adding life to years rather than merely extending lifespan. So in that issue, Robert Havighurst defined successful aging in terms of focusing on adding life to years. Basically means the quality of life, not just chronologically somebody is entering into old age group. So this Havighurst sought a comprehensive theory of successful aging that would not only maximize individual satisfaction and happiness in later years, but also balance the needs and desires of all age groups within the society. So the main idea behind this whole model was to give a comprehensive theory of successful aging, to maximize the satisfaction and happiness in the later world. So it's a very psychological approach, the second viewpoint that we talked about. So his approach focused on the psychological aspects of aging, such as life satisfaction, active engagement in activities, acceptance of the changes that come with the aging. These are some of the parameters that they used to understand successful aging. This perspective highlights the importance of well-being and adaptation in the aging process. The focus is more on well-being from the psychological perspective to define whether somebody has entered into successful aging category or not. So that is one model that talks about successful aging mostly from the perspective of well-being, life satisfaction, happiness. To what extent these things are available is kind of experienced by people in the old age group. To that extent, we can say they are aging successfully. Another model that is also discussed in the literature is a model given by Rowe and Kahn's model of successful aging. So Rowe and Kahn 1997 proposed a model that differentiates between three groups. So they categorized older adults into three groups. One is older adults with diseases. Second is normal aging with typical cognitive and physical decline. So, this person may not have very serious diseases and other thing, but they are normally aging with typical patterns of physical decline and mental decline or mental abilities declining capacities of the cognitive and physical abilities. And the third category they said these are called successful agers, or that age group where they have successfully aged. And how they defined that third group is like they argued that while normal aging may involve modest functional decline, which is a typical case happens with a lot of people as we age, there are certain functional decline that happens. This increases in vulnerability, highlighting the need to study successful agers. Can we separate successful agers from this category? That is what they were talking about. So, those with high functional capacity and low disease risk to potentially expand the population of older adults who experience successful aging. So, they are talking about this particular age group are those people where there is a high functional capacity which is maintained even in the old age and low diseases. So, this is what differentiate this group from the other groups. So, this is a group where they have maybe with significant diseases and so on. So, that is basically in this particular perspective they cannot be considered successful agers. Even people with normal aging category also, this is not considered successful agers from this perspective if there is a typical decline in cognitive and physical functionings. Successful agers are those people where they are still maintaining a highly functional capacity and low disease in terms of physical diseases and so on. So, Rowe and Kahn's model of successful aging includes three key components. To call somebody as a successful agers, three criteria they use should be fulfilled by these people. Number one, a low likelihood of diseases and minimum disability. So, the people even in the old age, their diseases are very less and there is a minimum disability or any kinds of functional decline. Second is there is a high cognitive and physical functioning. Even in the old age, these people are maintaining high mental functioning and physical functioning. They are able to move around and so on. There is no issues with that. And there is a the mental alertness and abilities, processing abilities, all these are well maintained. The third category is active engagement in meaningful activities and relationships. People in the old age, if they are maintaining and actively engaged with meaningful activities, still they are doing, and they are engaged with the relationships and people around them and so on. So, these are the three important criteria which this model uses to call somebody whether this person is a successful ager or not. So, in their view, all three criteria must be met for an individual to be considered as a successful aging. So, this is from their perspective. So, we have different perspective, but if somebody uses Rowe and Kahn's model, then these are the three important criteria. So, this could be one important way of looking at who are considered as successful agers. Now, this definition emphasizes physiological health, meaning that the older adults with chronic condition such as diabetes, heart diseases who are otherwise happy and active would not meet this criteria. Now, one of the issue with this particular model is that they give lot of emphasis on the physical functioning also along with other functioning, cognitive functioning and so on. So, physiological health or physical health plays very important role in this model. So, even if somebody is living high quality life psychologically in terms of otherwise very happy and active, but they have very chronic diseases and conditions, then from this perspective they cannot be called as successful agers. So, that is something very specific about this model. Now, let us look at to a very purely psychological model of successful aging, which is proposed by Ryff, model of successful aging. So, Ryff we have already discussed the Ryff's model of eudynamic well-being, where eudynamic well-being has been described using 6 dimensions. So, Ryff has also used those 6 dimensions to even conceptualize successful aging. So, Ryff 1989 model of successful aging takes more psychological approach, contrasting with models that require physical health. For example, the last model that we discussed, was focusing very strongly on the physical health. Ryff's model is not considering physical aspect, it is only considering psychological aspect in terms of conceptualizing successful aging. So Ryff emphasized the importance of ongoing development in later life and the influence of cultural and historical factors on aging. So mostly ongoing development and psychological factors. She adopted her general model of well-being, which we discussed in the earlier modules, to define successful aging through 6 components. So these 6 components are components of eudaimoc well-being. She conceptualized used the same 6 components to conceptualize successful aging. What are those components? Number 1 is self-acceptance. So maintaining a positive self-view. So even in the old age, if somebody is able to maintain that positive self-view and self-acceptance, this is very important criteria of successful aging. Then the positive relationship, which means building meaningful connection with others that involve intimacy, affection and reciprocity. So positive relationship, the quality of relationship one has, is the second criteria. Third one is autonomy. So that means exercising independence, self-regulation even under social pressure. To what extent you are able to maintain your sense of autonomy, sense of freedom, sense of choice in life and self-regulation and so on. The next factor is environmental mastery, managing one's environment and maintaining control over the daily activities. So that's called environmental mastery, to what extent you are able to control the things around your environment and daily activities. Purpose in life, finding meaningful and continue to engage with significant goals. So even in the old age group, are you able to maintain the purpose in life or meaning in life by continuously engaging with significant goals of life and so on. The last one is personal growth, staying open to new experiences and demonstrating ongoing self-improvement. So if whether the person is able to grow continuously even in the old age by being open and there is a continuous expansion and self-improvement. So these are the 6 criteria which are actually the criteria of eudaimoc well-being. The same criteria can be used to identify successful agers as compared to people who are not successfully aging. So this is a typical eudaimoc well-being model. So the Ryff's model promotes a holistic view of successful aging, recognizing psychological well-being as central to fulfilling life regardless of physical health status. So in this perspective, physical health is not given any importance. Regardless of whatever physical health status you have, if you maintain these psychological factors, then you can be considered as a successful aging person or successful agers. Now there is another perspective to look at successful aging, is called as a subjective experience view. What is that view? The move towards patient-centered care in fields like medicine and psychology emphasize collaboration between providers and patients, respecting patients' personal goals and values. So in this perspective, subjective experience of the person is given more importance. So there is no external criteria as such that the person should fulfill 1, 2, 3 criteria. There is no such concept in this perspective. In this perspective, the importance is given to the experiences and the views of the person himself or herself. What this person thinks about their life, are they experiencing successful aging? What is their perspective? So if they experience their life in terms of they are successfully aging, then we can call that they have entered into successful aging category or not. So subjective experience of the person is given importance here rather than some external criteria. So reflecting this approach, Strawbridge and colleagues 2002 explored successful aging by asking 867 older adults from Alameda County study to self-assess whether they are successfully aging or aging successfully. Half of the participants responded positively, reflecting their own definition of successful aging. So this is an empirical study that was done on 867 older adults, and in that study they found about 50% of the participants, they themselves reported that they are successfully aging based on whatever criteria they have used. So they feel that they are successfully aging. However, when the researcher applied Rowe and Kahn's criteria, so that we have discussed earlier, which focuses on the physical health also, which emphasizes physical health, cognitive functioning, active engagement, only 19% met the standard of successful aging. So this simply reflects that if you use an external criteria and the subjective criteria, the result may be very different. A person may feel that they are successfully aging, but if you use certain specific criteria, they may not qualify based on whatever criteria people are using. So this study basically shows that. So the major factor is the discrepancy of chronic condition, because Rowe and Kahn's model basically focuses more on the physical health, and presence of chronic condition will disqualify them. So the 43% patient with chronic condition felt they were actually aging well subjectively, though they couldn't qualify as successful agers under Rowe and Kahn's model. So those classified as successful agers in either framework tended to report higher levels of overall well-being, but there are certain percentage of people who qualified as successful ager in both the categories, subjective category as well as Rowe and Kahn's model. So that was I think 19%. They actually experienced overall greater well-being, including greater happiness, optimism, relationship satisfaction, energy, perceived control, and so on. So similar findings were replicated in a Scottish sample where participants generally viewed themselves as successfully aging despite not fully meeting Rowe and Kahn's model. So obviously those physical factors may not be taken into consideration, especially in this subjective criteria, when the person, they themselves, when they think about their life in terms of whether they are successfully aging or not, a lot of them may not consider their physical functioning part. So that is clear from a lot of this research. So this research suggests that personal definition of successful aging may align more closely with subjective well-being than rigid clinical criteria. People may not really focus much on the physical functioning part or clinical criteria when they consider what is the meaning of a successful aging. So all these studies reflects that people give their a lot of importance to their subjective feeling, subjective judgment about their life, rather than just focusing on physically whether they are functioning or the presence of chronic diseases or not. So just to summarize whatever we have discussed in terms of different models, how this model conceptualize successful aging. So the first perspective that we talk about is just reaching certain age group, that is longevity model, we can say, living into old age or getting into the old age category, whatever 60 years or 65 years or oldest old crossing 80 or 85 years, whatever it is, based on whatever criteria different countries use. So that is the one of the model which only talks about physically moving into certain age groups. Havighurst model focuses on maximizing happiness and life satisfaction in older age. So if you are experiencing happiness, satisfaction in older age, you can be called as successful ager. Rowe and Kahn's model focuses on three factors: low diseases or no disease or disability, high cognitive physical function, active engagement with life. So these three are important criteria as per this model. The Ryff's model focuses on 6 psychological factors. One is self-acceptance, positive relationship, autonomy, environmental mastery, purpose in life, and personal growth. And the last criteria or the model that we discussed is subjective experience. It focuses on what the person feels and thinks about their life, whether they feel they are successfully aging or not. If they feel, then they are successfully aging. So that means I am aging well, that means I am a successful ager. So this is very subjective perception. Now we'll look into some of the very popular or some of the classic studies that were done with the aging population, and their findings gives us a lot of information about or insights about successful aging and what factors contribute to that. So we'll discuss few of these classic studies that were done with the aging population. One such study is the MacArthur study. This study or research, MacArthur Research Network on Successful Aging, it funded from 1985 to 1996. So it is a long-term study of about a decade. It's played a key role in advancing gerontology by emphasizing positive aspects of aging. So this study was focusing on the successful aging concept. Now this network of research comprises 16 interdisciplinary scientists assembled by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, aim to redefine gerontology by studying factors like what factors contribute to aging, successful aging and so on. They were focusing on genetics, physical, psychological and social factors that enable people to maintain, even improve functioning as they age. So, they are looking at the factors that contribute to successful aging through this research project. So, their effort led to the development of the Rowe and Kahn's model that we discussed already. So, this whole Rowe and Kahn's criteria that we discussed as a model actually came out of this study. The criteria for successful aging that we discussed already, also known as MacArthur model. So, this is actually, these are same thing, MacArthur model or Rowe and Kahn's criteria is coming from the same study. So, which focuses on low disease risk, high functioning capacity and active engagement, as we have already discussed. So, this is one of such classic study that gave rise to certain criteria for successful aging. One significant component of this initiative was a longitudinal study that tracked over thousands of well-functioning older adults for 8 years. So, this study is a very comprehensive study. It is a longitudinal study, means they are observing and studying the same group of population for a certain years. Here it is 8 years. They have been, the same groups were studied and looked at how certain things are changed, and they included thousands of old age population, old age individuals. So, this research laid the foundation for gerontological study by introducing the concept of successful aging, leading to increased funding from major agencies like National Institute of Health and so on. This was one of the very comprehensive study that introduced this concept of successful aging. The interdisciplinary approach of the MacArthur network enabled a well-rounded examination of aging by incorporating self-report, interviews, imaging techniques which provided robust basis for understanding aging dynamics. So, this study included diverse methodologies like self-reports from the participants, interviews of the participants, even the physical functioning of the study of the individuals who were studied using scanning and imaging techniques and so on. So, the data from diverse sources were collected together to come to this conclusion. So, it is a very robust study in terms of methodology. So, this was one study that led to a model that we discussed. Now, second, another important study in the old age population that is also considered as a classic study is Harvard study of adult development. Now, this Harvard study of adult development, which began in 1938, this was much earlier than the MacArthur study, is one of the long-running research project focused on understanding what helps people thrive and experience well-being. So, the focus was on what factors lead to well-being and thriving experiences in life. So, they followed the lives of two groups of men, cohorts of men, more than 75 years. So, it is very comprehensive study, very well dedicated study, where they followed two groups of men for more than 75 years, which is like rare thing to study. It is not so easy to conduct such kind of studies. The study has produced invaluable insights into what makes people live long, healthy and fulfilling lives. So, they are like not only just focusing on old age, but they are focusing on how people developmentally, factors that are responsible, for long, healthy and fulfilling lives. So, this study consisted of two main groups of men, as already stated. One is the grant study group. So, this group includes 268 men who graduated from Harvard University between 1939 and 1944. So, they started at that time. So, those who graduated from Harvard University between these years 1939 and 1944, between these years, that is these 5 years, they took those people, they started studying this group of men. These men were initially chosen to represent sample of well-off educated individuals from various backgrounds. So, if you look at this group, they are very privileged group, studied in the Harvard University, well-off groups from the various background, but mostly this is a group which is we can consider as a privileged group. They were in their late teens or early 20s when the study began. So these are the individuals when they just graduated from Harvard University, and they were mostly in their 20s and early teens, or late teens or early 20s. The study started and they followed this group till their very old age, when they reached their old age. So it's a very comprehensive study. So this was one group of people they studied. The second group of sample included, which is also called as the Glick study. This group consists of 456 men who were recruited from the working class neighborhood of the inner city Boston. They were primarily from less privileged background, providing a contrast to the more privileged, the first group, Grant study group. The Glick study participants were also recruited in their teens. Similarly, so these groups are also recruited when they are in the teenage. Both the groups in the late teenage or early 20s, this kind of the age groups were very similar. But one group of men were very privileged from the very privileged background. The other groups were from not so privileged background. So they followed these people from their teenage till their old age, and they measured various things. That from that they made many conclusions. So the study employs a range of data types. What kind of data they measured or took data from these individuals? Self-report, interviews, objective health assessment, and so on. So this multimodal approach helps build a more complete and nuanced understanding of successful aging. So they took data from the diverse types of data so that they are more confident about their conclusions. The Harvard study of adult development has produced several groundbreaking insights about human flourishing and aging. So a lot of findings they reported from this study which are groundbreaking and insightful. Among these, one of the most notable finding was the importance of relationship and its role in successful aging. One of the most consistent and powerful finding of the study is that close relationships are critical to happiness and health throughout the life. So they are not just focusing on old age. Obviously, they studied from the teenage to old age, so they are looking at whole spectrum of life. There are a lot of findings, but one of the most important findings which was reported from this study is the role of relationships in terms of how it contributes to happiness and health throughout the life. The study found that people with strong supportive relationship, whether with family, friends, romantic partners and so on, are happier, healthier and live longer than those who are more isolated. So this was one of the very significant findings from this study. The people with strong supportive network of people were very much happier, healthier, and they lived longer as compared to people who are more isolated, has less network of support and so on. So this was even more important than factors like wealth, fame and IQ. So this relationship factor was most important. Even other factors like wealth, fame and IQ are not that important when this factor was compared. So this was one of the important findings from this study. Another classic study that was done with the aging population is the Alameda County study. The Health and Ways of Living study, which is also called as Alameda County study, initiated in 1965 by principal investigators Breslow and Kaplan, followed 6,928 participants, including 890 over age 65 from Alameda County, California for 35 years. So again, this is also a very comprehensive study. They followed a group of people for about 35 years. So this study was more demographically diverse than Harvard study, because Harvard study was only considering a privileged group and less privileged group. So they are not demographically very diverse. But this study included people from diverse background and developmentally and followed participants longer than the MacArthur study, allowing for analysis of demographic factors. So this study allowed to look at different demographics because they had different genders, race, ethnicity and so on, which was not there in the Harvard study. So this study gave an opportunity for understanding long-term effects of health behaviors and so on. So these studies are very comprehensive. They have many findings. We cannot discuss all these findings. We are just talking about key findings. So one key outcome of the study was the identification of Alameda 7, a set of 7 health behaviors linked to longevity. So they found 7 important factors that were responsible for longevity and successful aging. These 7 factors were basically they found at least sleeping for 7 to 8 hours per night, eating breakfast, eating regular meals without snacking, maintaining a healthy weight, exercising regularly, limiting alcohol consumption, and not smoking. They found these factors were very significantly determinant of longevity in one's life, and we can say in terms of successful aging. While not all of these behaviors have proven consistently in the later studies to successful aging, this study laid a foundation for further research into factors that predict longevity and healthy aging. So even though all of these factors were not found later to be very strongly predictors of successful aging, but it gave a foundation to understand in terms of factors that contribute to successful aging. Now another concept that comes when we talk about successful aging is something called as a blue zones. So blue zones are basically those zones of the globe or regions where people generally, there is an unusually or there is a higher number of usual number of people live much longer than average. So these are the zones where people live much longer than other people in other regions of the world. So there is a large number of population in these zones where they live very long. So these are called as a blue zones. So they identified 5 blue zones in the world. So these are like, one is Loma Linda in United States, another is called Nicoya, Costa Rica, another is Sardinia, Italy, another one is Ikaria, Greece, and the last one is Okinawa, Japan. So these 5 zones, they found the people actually in these zones live much longer than people in the other regions of the world. So in 2004, how this all began, researcher Pauline Pace and colleagues initially they identified Sardinia, Italy as a region with higher rates of centenarians, means higher rates of people who live longer. This discovery led to the term blue zone, describing areas where people live significantly longer than the average. Then Buettner later expanded this research and identified 5 blue zones, as I mentioned: Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Ikaria, Greece, and Loma Linda, California, US. So these are the 5 zones they identify. Buettner's team investigated these regions, focusing on genetic, lifestyle, social factors. They identified 9 behaviors associated with extreme longevity in these zones. Why people live so long in this zone, they were trying to understand. And they found the factors included why people in this zone live very long. Some of the factors they found are that natural physical activity. So there was people who are very active physically in terms of physical activity. There was a lot of calorie reduction related careful behavior, plant-based diets with limited meat. So they are focusing much on plant-based diet as compared to too much consumptions of meat. Moderate alcohol consumption, not too much. Maintaining strong social and spiritual connection. So they are very active socially, physically also. Having a sense of purpose in their life. Focus on family relationship was very strong. Engaging in community activities was also very strong. People who are very actively engaged with community activities and so on. So they found these are some of the factors which actually contributed to very long life in all these zones. All these contributed to well-being and longevity. This finding suggests that longevity is not only about physical health, but also social relationship and meaningful life engagement. So these themes are coming again and again in all the studies. Social relationships, active engagement, and obviously the physical fitness part is also there. So these are some of the studies so that reflects what are the important factors that contribute to successful aging. So these are the classic studies because they have really devoted very longitudinal studies with large span of time dedicatedly studying on factors that are responsible using multi-method study. So these are very significant study in terms of understanding old age population and what leads to successful aging and so on. So this particular lecture was focused on understanding what is the meaning of successful aging and some of the models associated with successful aging and some classic studies in relation to successful aging. So with this I stop here and I will talk about the second part of this lecture in the upcoming session. Thank you.